Hello and welcome to our first full night of Wonder. My name is Kira and I am joined here by Lydia. Lydia, what is Wonder all about?
That's a very good question. Wanda is the Warwick Christian Union Events Week, where we're going to be asking and exploring all the big questions in life. So it's a really good opportunity to just learn more about Jesus and what even is the Christian faith, what do we believe. It's going to be really good fun.
Wow, that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
I've been wondering a lot about stuff recently myself, namely, will my modules ever end? They seem to be going on forever. What have you been wondering about recently?
Pretty similar things, I'm not going to lie. I've been wondering, will I ever get my work done on time? I think the answer is no, but we'll just have to wait and see about that. I've also been wondering, when will I actually do something interesting, because it has been a while.
It's been a
It's just
while for
me.
me too. The most interesting thing I've been wondering about recently is probably if my dog really understands whenever I speak to her.
That
Lots
is
of deep philosophical things to be wondering about.
that's a very important question. I have questioned the same thing about my cat, and I have questioned it, but I'm pretty sure it's true. I think he can hear me, because otherwise why would he stick around? Surely I have to be having something interesting to say.
Tonight, though, we're going to be wondering about something much more important, if whether our pets understand us. We're going to be wondering if whether this guy Jesus is offering anything worth having. And to answer this question, we have Andrew joining us.
Hello,
Welcome,
Hello.
Andrew.
nice to see you.
It's so good to see you too. Before we get into answering that very important question, though, we were wondering if we could get to know you a little bit better by playing a game called Would You Rather? Do you know how that game works okay?
I have played this game before, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. We will list two possibilities. The stranger and the obscure, the better, is what we went on whenever we were coming up with these questions. So please don't be freaked out. And you simply need to decide which one you would rather. The first one we have up for you is: would you rather be compelled to scream hello to absolutely everyone you meet, or be compelled to completely ignore strangers for at least 2 minutes when you meet them? I think that's number two. Well, we're very glad you didn't ignore us when we first met. But you know what? I think I would probably do the same, because if you were walking along the street and had to scream hello to people, that would be pretty weird.
You'd be arrested quicker that way, I think.
I feel
True.
like that would be more fun though. I would have definitely gone with the screaming hello, because I think you'd make more friends that way. You'd People would want to interact with you, but maybe that's just me. I'm not sure. But
You do love to speak, so you
I do, I do. You're absolutely right. The second would you rather question we have is more mystical. Would you rather be able to fly, but you can only do it as fast as you could walk, or would you be able to be invisible, but only for a minute at a time?
Oh, I think being invisible, you could get out of a lot of difficult situations in a minute, I think.
That is that's very true. I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking flying. I just, even if it's as fast as I could walk, I think it'd be so cool to be in the air. But that, again, just me.
I could get right over to uni without having to use an airplane if I could fly.
But
This is
very,
true.
very slowly.
Okay, our third one, a little bit more deep, is: would you rather lose the ability to read or lose the ability to speak?
That is a difficult one. Probably to read because I like the sound of my voice so much. I guess I'm a preacher, so yeah. Although it would mean I wouldn't have anything useful to say if I couldn't read things, but I think I'd like to still be able to speak.
The two are very intrinsically linked, but yeah, I think I would rather lose the ability to read too. I'm a bit like you. I like the sound of my own voice.
Would there still be audiobooks? I suppose that's the cheat, isn't it?
Oh,
Hmm.
this is why you're
Probably would.
on here. That was a
Yeah,
good one on that.
hadn't even thought of that. Yeah. Our next one is quite topical, I'd say. Would you rather never be able to take your mask off again. Obviously to eat, just sort of under the mask or over, however you want to do it. Or everything you eat for the rest of your life just taste faintly like hand sanitizer.
That is very topical, and they're both experiences that we've had this year, right?
Yeah.
Um, I really like food. My sister is a chef, so I think maintaining my ability to taste things that do not taste like hand sanitizer is the priority. So even if I had to wear a mask all the time, as long as I could get it, the food into my mouth, I'd like it to taste of something else.
You know what? I don't really even mind wearing a mask, especially because the weather has been cold recently. It's quite nice. Keeps you warm.
Comforting. It's good, yeah.
Our final would you rather is a very controversial one. Would you rather keep chocolate in the fridge or the cupboard?
Oh, the fridge, definitely. Yeah,
No.
you shouldn't be able to spread chocolate.
Okay, we don't
Agreed.
want it melted, but whenever you take it right out of the fridge and you have to like proper crunch it,
It
it's
snaps.
That's the best part. Yeah,
No, I'm with you, Lydia.
divine.
absolutely. It's the only right answer on that one. But we've now covered all the important things, I'd say, but we are just going to ask you a few more little minor details. So can you just tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Do you have any pets? That's a very important question.
My name's Andrew, and I live in Greenwich in southeast London. I think I mentioned yesterday at the pub quiz, I live on the Greenwich Meridian, if that's of interest to anyone. So 0 degrees longitude goes through my house about a metre that way. So I think I'm in the Eastern Hemisphere right now. But when I go to bed, I'll be in the Western Hemisphere. I have a pet dog called Gustav, who was here, but I've just fed him, and now he's not interested anymore. So he's gone to sleep on my bed, I think. He's not hanging around to find out whether Jesus is offering anything worth having. But as far as the dog's concerned, all you need is food and a walk in Greenwich Park to catch squirrels and a bed. My job is I'm a pastor, so I'm a church minister at Grace Church Greenwich, and I also lecture part-time at a college in theology. And usually once a year I do a week of talks like this at a university, and it's great to be with Warwick this year.
That sounds like quite the life.
Yeah.
Andrew, we know that you are a Christian, so we're going to put you on the spot here and ask you if you can give us a 60-second testimony of how that came to be.
Okay, I'll let me start a timer so that I know in 60 seconds. Hang on a second. So, why am I a Christian, or how it came to be that I was a Christian in 60 seconds, starting now? I grew up in a kind of nominally Christian family, so I got baptized as a baby, didn't really go to church until my piano teacher told me to join the church choir, which I did, and was a choir boy with a high-pitched voice, but didn't really believe it. Went through the traditions of church. By the time I was a teenager, I was quite cynical. I was reading Richard Dawkins. I went to study science at university. I rejected it all as make-believe, I guess. At university, in my first year, I met some real Christians who actually had reasons for what they believed, which is a surprise to me. I'd never met people like that before, and they seemed to have real integrity, and that got me curious. But I didn't really want Christianity to be true because I just assumed it would wreck my life. And gradually I became more convinced it was true, but more reluctant for it to be true. Until my final stage was I realised I just couldn't hide from it anymore, and I put my faith in Jesus in 1994 when I was 18 years old. You can work out my age from that.
That was very impressive.
Well done.
59 seconds on the dot.
That's a very good job. That was really lovely to hear. Thank you for sharing that with us. So as we've mentioned quite a lot of times, this week is all about wandering. As we were just wondering before you started, if you have any hopes for this week, what would you like for people to get out of it?
Hey, yeah, I do have a hope for it. So I went to university. I've been to church many times. I'd never thought seriously about Jesus, which sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Because you assume that at church you would. But I'd kind of gone through the motions of religion, but I'd never read the Bible as a thinking adult. I'd heard readings at school and stuff, but I'd never sort of engaged with it. And when I did, I was really surprised by what I found. And I'm hoping there might be people watching this YouTube stream, this Facebook stream, who as a result of this week, we'll look seriously at who Jesus is. And tonight I'm hoping just to get your attention and to whet your appetite and intrigue you. But I would love it if you decided this is serious enough that I need to engage with it and look into it. And I'm not going to tell you to believe things just because I say so, but I'm going to invite you to look at who Jesus is for yourself. And if that's the outcome, I think it could change your life, and I'd love that. So that's my ambition.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew, for answering all of our weird and wacky questions. Just before we pass over to you to answer the most important question for tonight, we would like to let anyone watching know that if you have any questions while you're watching, you can ask Andrew via the Google form in the description of the video. And then at the very end of Andrew's talk, we'll give him a chance to answer those. But other than that, over to you, Andrew.
Thanks so much. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are for the first of these evening talks. And the title is Wonder If Jesus is Offering Anything Worth Having. I mean, what exactly is on offer? Hours of boredom in a medieval building, listening to organ music, looking through stained glass. I mean, that's what I used to think it was about. I'd mistaken Jesus for the trappings of religion. There's a great poem by a guy called Steve Turner entitled How to Hide Jesus. And he says, let's think, nowhere to lay his head. Let's build a house for him, somewhere away from the poor. Let's fill it with brass and silence. That's sure to throw them off. Let's think his tongue was of the masses. Let's teach him Latin and 17th century English. They'll never think of listening in. There's people after Jesus. Quick, let's hide him. It's a thought-provoking little poem, and basically what it's saying is religion's done quite a good job often of keeping Jesus at arm's length. People know about cathedrals and archbishops and things, but they don't know much about Jesus. And I'm sorry if that's not true of you. It certainly was true of me, as I said. And what I want to do this week, every evening, I'm going to be opening part of the New Testament, the part of the Bible, and reading from one of the eyewitness biographies of Jesus by a guy called John. John was a fisherman, and together with his brother James, became one of the first followers of Jesus. And he spent 3 years of his life with this guy, and at the end of it concluded that he'd met God. And I wanted to stop for a minute and think that in itself is quite a surprising thing, right? So you haven't spent that long with me. We've been on this call for 10 minutes and I did a few would you rathers. That was probably already enough for you to conclude quite confidently that I am not God. I mean, you know, I'm being stupid, but I mean, like if you were to live with somebody up close for 3 years, so think of your university housemate or someone that you've known a lot from school, and then at the end of that you think, I think he probably created the universe. That is not a conclusion that you come to quickly, I don't think, if you're a rational person. So what was it that convinced John that he had met the person who was the author of life? And so I'd like you to read it with me, or some passages from it with me, with that question in mind. So this is what John saw, this is what happened to him. Well, if you're going to be really skeptical, this is what John said happened to him. You could say that he made it all up if you want. Although actually his account does dovetail with other things we know historically from the first century, and he gets persecuted for it. So it's not like the early Christians got really rich, or they were, you know, lived in massive palaces or anything. They got persecuted. Some of them got killed for testifying to this. And there's a kind of gritty honesty about it. And we're just going to look at one episode in Jesus' life. It's actually the first miracle that he does as recorded by John in John's account. And it's in, by the way, you can get hold of one of these. So I'm reading from a Bible, and you can obviously buy a Bible from Amazon or whatever. But all the talks this week are going to be from John's Gospel. And you can find it online. There's a website called BibleGateway.com, or just Google, you know, the Bible John, and you can find it and start reading for yourself if you'd like to. But this is a little excerpt from John chapter 2, and you might have heard the story before, but I want us to look at it in a bit of detail. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They've got no more wine." Something of a scandal at a wedding, if you run out of booze early on. It's a bit of a disaster. "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 80 to 120 litres. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and give it to the master of the banquet." So they did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He didn't realize where it had come from, though the servants who'd drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you've saved the best until now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of his signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And maybe you've heard the story of Jesus turning water into wine, and that's the account of it, as John records it. And already you can see the way this is the kind of thing that would get someone's attention. I thought this was just my mate who I went fishing with, and now he started to do some really, really unusual things. What is going on? But I want you to notice 2 very surprising things about what happens. The first surprise is that Jesus does something that is ordinarily impossible. Now, my first degree was in natural sciences, and then I went on to do a PhD in neuroscience. And I started off doing quite a lot of chemistry, and you don't need to know that much chemistry to know that H2O to C2H5OH can't be done. I mean, you cannot turn water into alcohol. If you could, you'd be very rich. But this isn't just even water into alcohol. This is water into extremely good wine. So if you know anything about wine chemistry, that involves all sorts of complicated tannins and velinins and loads of organic molecules. And you can't get those out of water. It's impossible. And that's surprising. And some people would therefore write off the whole story as a sort of naive fairy story just for that reason. This is against the law of science. It can't be done. It must be false. But I want to suggest to you that you're making some assumptions there about the universe which aren't justified. Let me explain what I mean. You don't come to this question with a neutral starting point, and none of us does. And I want to give you 2 different worldviews that you could approach this from. Worldview 1, you're an atheist, and the atheist believes that there is no God. There's no ultimate transcendent causes beyond this world, but the cosmos is all that ever was or is or ever will be. In the words of Bertrand Russell, the British philosopher, mankind is nothing but a chance collocation of atoms on a minor speck of interstellar dust. We're here by accident. The Earth is here by accident. There was a Big Bang that was purposeless, and here we are. Or in the words of Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, every living being was born without reason, prolongs itself out of weakness, and dies by chance. I don't imagine it's much fun to sort of lift your spirits in the middle of lockdown. But anyway, it's a frank description, isn't it, of an ideology that says there's no purpose behind the world, and we are merely here by accident. And the only grounds of reality is just atoms and the laws of physics. That's all. Now, in that kind of world, you couldn't turn water into wine. The laws of physics are fixed. That just doesn't work atomically. That's one view. Here's another view. Maybe we're not here by accident. Maybe there's a God that made us, and that God is enormously powerful. And the Big Bang was not an unguided, random thing, but rather it was God deciding to bring matter into existence. Human beings aren't here by chance. We're here because God designed us and made us. And the world that we observe is a world sustained in existence by a powerful creator, second by second. And one day, that powerful creator became a human being and grew up to be a man. He went to a wedding where they'd run out of wine, and he turned water into wine. Now, on this view, on the atheist view, it cannot have happened. On the there is really a God who made the world view, it could have happened. It would be very unusual, but it's not impossible to imagine that God could do that kind of thing. In fact, I would actually be quite suspicious if Jesus was God but couldn't do any miracles. If he said, "Yeah, I'm here and I made the world, I made the universe," and they say, "Oh, prove it, do something unusual." "Oh no, I'm sorry, but I actually can't do anything that the rest of you can't do. But trust me, I'm God." I don't think you are, mate. No, let's call for the psychiatrist, right? So if the claim could be true, and I wonder whether you're even open to the possibility that it's true, right? Because within the atheist worldview, this won't fit. There's not a God at all, let alone a God who starts walking around Palestine in the middle of the first century. But what if this view is right and there is a God? Well, this is the sort of thing that you might expect God to do. And at this point, let's just step back a bit on the science question. As I say, I was a scientist before becoming a vicar. On the science question, I want to say don't confuse observed uniformity with divine limits. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Science, it observes uniformity. So we just notice that things behave every day the same way. And because certain things are uniform, we can describe them using laws or principles in science. So, for example, the law of gravity. So you drop a banana out of your window and you time its acceleration due to gravity, 9.81 meters per second. And then you drop a banana out of your friend's window and you measure it's the same acceleration. In fact, you drop a banana off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I don't know why that's always what people use for these experiments, but anyway, you try that. I went there in the summer during lockdown. It was just after lockdown. It's a cool place, but I didn't throw a banana off because I thought I might be arrested. But if I had timed it, 9.81 meters per second. It's the same for bananas dropped from different places at different places of the world. And so because you're observing something uniform, you come up with a theory, the theory of gravitation. Acceleration due to gravity on the surface of the Earth, 9.81 meters per second. Sure. But that doesn't mean that God is limited by that. It just means that God is so consistent in the way that he runs the universe that he runs every bit of gravity the same and every second of time the same. And scientists can come along and describe that. But there's nothing to stop God, if you wanted to, just adding a zero one day to the underlying gravitational constant. I mean, it would cause havoc, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Now, I know there are days when it does seem that God has multiplied gravity by 10 and you're stuck in your bed, but greengrocer's shops the world over would the bananas suddenly crash through the shelves because they wouldn't have been put up with that amount of force in mind and so on. But God could do that if he wants. It's just that he prefers to be consistent about the world. God is a consistent God, and so science is possible. But if he wants to, he's not constrained by those laws. Now, if God messed about with the law of physics every day, there wouldn't be laws of physics. There wouldn't be anything uniform enough to measure. But what if God keeps water as water every day of history until the day when he visits a wedding and he wants to get everyone's attention, and so he does something ordinarily impossible and he turns water into extremely good wine? But that's the first surprise, that Jesus might do that. But the second surprise is I'm kind of approaching this from a different angle. The second surprise is that having the power to do so, he would want to, because lots of people, myself included, and in my former self included, have the idea of God as the kind of character who would want to go around the world turning wine into water. God's greatest fear is that someone in the world somewhere might be enjoying themselves and he must immediately stamp it out. And that's what I used to think about Jesus. I really did think that. I thought, if I become a Christian, it will wreck my life, because Jesus is all about don't. He's all about stopping enjoyment and fun. And it's a kind of daft thing to think. I mean, if Jesus is the creator of the world, obviously he created wine. It's not an accident that it tastes nice. That grapes, when fermented and aged in oak barrels, taste really, really good. I mean, he invented oak. And he invented grapes, and he invented human beings who would work out how to do that with them. The same goes for sex, doesn't it? I mean, it's not like you know, we discovered, how to enjoy ourselves with our bodies, but God never planned that. I mean, why do you think, if God is our creator, why do you think sex is pleasurable? Because God's invented it that way. God is a God who's put very good things into the world. Now, of course, things can be misused, and the Bible does put limits on how sex is to be used and how alcohol is to be used. And I understand that because I've got a good friend who was I had a good friend who was an alcoholic, and she died quite young. And it was a horrible thing. I mean, alcohol misused is horrible. Sex misused actually has hurt a lot of my friends. So God puts limits on those things because he cares about us. But don't think that God's anti-fun. Who do you think made all the fun things in the world? But the creator of the world. And here's Jesus at a wedding that's going pretty badly. And after Jesus steps in, it goes pretty well. I mean, this is a lot of wine. We're 80 to 120 litres times 6. That's enough wine for a good party. And it's really good wine. So surprise 1, Jesus has the power to do this. Surprise 2, he would want to do this. But there's actually something more going on, and it's I'll have to delve in a bit closer for us to see it, but it's right at the heart of what Jesus come to do, because Jesus hasn't just come to fix parties. Although the fact that he does is quite a thought, isn't it? When was the last time you were at a party that, well, that's a cool question, isn't it? Because it's been at least a year, right? But even before lockdown, when was the last time you were at a party that wasn't going very well and someone says, this party's a bit of a drag, let's call some Christians? It's not the stereotype, is it? But I want to suggest Jesus actually makes the party go really well. But there's something more going on. I wonder if you noticed as I read it that the credit for the excellent wine, it goes to the bridegroom. The master of ceremonies calls the bridegroom aside and says, everyone brings out the best wine at the beginning, and then the plonk when everyone's a bit sloshed and they can't tell the difference. But you brought out the best wine now at the end. The bridegroom gets the credit, and that is the clue that what Jesus has done here at this wedding is kind of step into the bridegroom's shoes. He's kind of done the bridegroom's job. Now, I know when people plan weddings nowadays, there's different traditions about the bride's family or the groom's family and who organises the reception and who pays for the honeymoon, that kind of thing. But in the first century, it was the bridegroom who paid for the reception. And the fact this wedding is run out of catering just in the early stages means that the bridegroom's done a really bad job. It's humiliating. This is a terribly organised wedding. And Jesus steps into the bridegroom's shoes. Now, you don't particularly notice that at the time, but then if I read on to the next chapter, in John chapter 3, John tells us about a guy called John the Baptist. It's a different John. And John the Baptist is describing Jesus as a bridegroom. He says that the bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine and is now complete. Now, it's a bit complicated to get your head around, but basically John the Baptist is saying, I'm like a best man. I'm the sideshow here. And I've just met the bridegroom, and I'm really chuffed that he's here. And he points to Jesus and he calls him a bridegroom. So Jesus turns up at a wedding and he acts like a bridegroom. Jesus' best friend says, I consider myself a bit like a best man, and he's the star of the show. He's the bridegroom. And then in the next chapter, John chapter 4, Jesus meets a woman by a well who is not the kind of person that you'd expect Jesus to be hanging out with. Don't know who you'd expect in Warwick for Jesus to be best friends with. The most religious people in the Christian Union, maybe, or the kindest and most morally upstanding people that you know, or maybe, but Jesus always defies expectations. He's having a conversation with a woman who it turns out is an outcast in various ways. She's a Samaritan, which was a despised race. It turns out Jesus wasn't a racist. He talks to Samaritan. But she's also a Samaritan with quite a history. She's on her 6th guy. having had 5 failed marriages. Now, in the first century, that was pretty scandalous. I mean, even by Hollywood standards, 6 marriages is quite a lot. And people are very surprised that Jesus should be talking to her. And he befriends her, and he offers her a relationship. Not a sexual or romantic relationship, more than that. He offers her the opportunity to know God and to be in a relationship with God. So let's put it all together. In John chapter 2, Jesus goes to a wedding and takes over the organising the reception like the bridegroom's meant to be. In John chapter 3, Jesus' friend says, I'm the best man, he's the bridegroom. In John chapter 4, Jesus kind of makes a marriage proposal of sorts to a woman who's messed up her life and has found no satisfaction at all in relationships. And what is happening here is Jesus is offering us a relationship with God. He hasn't come into the world just to tell us off, to criticize us, although he does have some hard things to say about our lives. He hasn't come just to try and get us in line, like some sort of heavenly headmaster, to come and give out some detentions and reform our behaviour. He's come with a proposal for a relationship. And one of the ways that God describes what it means to know him is like a marriage. Again and again in the Bible, he describes it that way. Now, I think that's a wonderful thing, because marriage is the most intimate, secure relationship that we recognise in our society. Somebody saying, all I am, I give to you. All I have, I share with you. I've been to a few weddings of friends. They're beautiful. They're beautiful things. Somebody saying, all of me is yours. And the other person says, all of me is yours. And it's intimate, and it's secure, because there are promises that are made, and you can be loved and known. And that's what Jesus says it's like to know God. It's not just to have a new headmaster in your life, or to have a new policeman coming to tell you off when you got it wrong. It's having a relationship with somebody who loves you and cares about you and wants to share what he has with you. And so Jesus goes to this wedding and sort of unveils not just his miraculous powers, but his great intention. Jesus is about relationship. He wants to know you and love you. He wants you to trust him and follow him. He's making a proposal to you. And all of that explodes onto the scene just with this first little miracle. Jesus goes one day to a place called Cana in Galilee, and all this unfolds. But it's a wonderful window into what he's about and what he's come to do. There's one little phrase I want to close with, which is this kind of weird one. I'll just read the beginning of the story again. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. Jesus and his disciples had been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they've got no more wine. She'll expectantly, do something, they've run out of wine. And Jesus says, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come. It's a kind of weird phrase, isn't it? Because he's saying it's not the time for this. And you imagine his mum saying, of course it's the time. We're at the wedding. There's no wine left. But this phrase, and as I say, I really want you to read John's Gospel for yourself. And please do. As you read it, this phrase keeps coming up again and again and again. His hour had not yet come. Here it's at a wedding. It's kind of mysterious. It comes up again in chapter 7 when Jesus has really upset the religious people and they want to arrest him and to kill him. But they can't, because we read his hour had not yet come. They want to kill him, but not yet. And we keep reading, and then we find that eventually they do get to kill him. The people who hated Jesus, they get to crucify him. And just before he's crucified, he says, the hour has come. It's like throughout Jesus' life, there's this countdown to the day that he was destined for. He calls it my time, or my hour. And it's the hour that he dies on a cross. Because Jesus knows that a relationship with him is only possible if he dies. That sounds very odd, doesn't it? And that isn't how normal weddings work. Will you marry me? Oh, I'm not sure. I think I'll wait until your funeral. It's an odd thing. And I'm actually not going to explain it now because I believe in cliffhangers. That's how Netflix series work. And I'd love you to come back on Thursday. Well, I'd love you to come back every day. But on Thursday, we're looking at the question, wonder why Jesus chose to die. But for today, I just want you to notice Jesus can do miraculous things. And don't write him off because of the science, because wouldn't the God who runs the universe be able to mess with the science? In fact, if he couldn't, I wouldn't believe that he was God. Secondly, it's surprising, isn't it, that Jesus doesn't want to turn wine into water. He's not the killjoy God, but a God who loves, or he made good things. And thirdly, realize that Jesus is offering you a relationship, but it's going to cost him his life. And please come back and we'll have a look why. If you can't wait that long, and I mean, I remember seeing the first Lord of the Rings film. This was years and years ago, and I was so excited, but I hadn't actually read the books. I was so excited. I thought, I cannot wait another year to find out what happens next. And that week, I read all 3 of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is quite long because I was just desperate to get to the end. If that's you, don't wait till tomorrow night. I mean, just read it yourself because it's all in here. I've given you a cliffhanger, but you can read it on yourself. Come back on Thursday and I'll explain it to you, or read ahead yourself. That would be the best thing you could possibly do. I'm going to stop now because I think we've got questions and so on. But thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing with us. It was amazing to hear your perspectives on Jesus and also to be reminded of how surprising he was. I think as a Christian, we can so often just imagine Jesus as God's son, came and died for us, but not see all the amazing things he did to show that and how we can then share that with others. I know turning water into wine sounds amazing. I'm sure a lot of my mates would love to be able to do that too. So it's so amazing to think of Jesus in that way, as someone who truly loves us and wants the best for us.
Yeah, I found that really encouraging. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really loved the idea that just reiterating the fact that Jesus wants a relationship with us, and just a picture of him as a bridegroom is really, it's just a great image, and that was really encouraging. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us.
I think we're going to leave any questions tonight for the Zoom Cafe. So for anyone listening, if you have some questions or just want to come and talk to Andrew a little bit more, you'll find the Zoom link in the Microsoft Teams that is now linked in the comments below. Yeah, come along, come ask Andrew some questions. He loves to be put on the spot, as we saw earlier in the Would You Rather. So we'd love to see you there.
Yeah, so just before you do head over to the Zoom Cafe, I'm just going to plug a few more things for the rest of the week. So every day until Friday, I believe, there'll be lunchtime events at 1 p.m. There'll be a short little video, about 5 minutes long, asking some important questions, getting you thinking. And at 6 p.m. till 7 p.m, there'll be an international event, which will be a really good opportunity to get involved and, again, ask some big questions, have a wonder about life. And then every day for the rest of this week, there'll also be these evening talks, which are just such a great opportunity to learn more about Jesus. That's just so encouraging, whether you believe in Jesus, whether you are cynical, whether he even existed. It's just a great opportunity to come and just hear and just have a think for yourself. So yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for what you brought to us today and that you will be bringing for the rest of the week. And yeah, that's us. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Adios.
Bye.
Bye.